and welcome back to Starting Six, a volleyball podcast with Liv and Haley. This is episode 1 of season 2. We are back for the 2024-25 season, which is already off to a super hot start. So, Liv, how is it going?
It's good. Just living life. Just got back from vacation. So that was good. And just some things happening in life that are exciting. So,
yeah, do you care to share with the group?
If anyone who's following knows my life, I got engaged this past weekend. So yes, it was perfect. We were in Banff, Canada, at Lake Louise, and did a morning sunrise hike. So it was beautiful and perfect. So now the wedding planning starts. But first, we have volleyball season to get to.
Facts. Yeah. We got to get through season first here. We got a busy couple months coming up. So, okay. Well,
wait, hold up. You've also had life changes.
Oh, that is true. I recently moved. I moved back. I'm in my parents' home, as you can tell by my scenery. I started a new job. I work in social media now for the AHL affiliate to the Chicago Blackhawks. So I've just been grinding away, and that season will start too. So not only do I have a lot of volleyball to watch, but I also will get to watch an absolute shitload of hockey. So that's exciting. But yes, that's the big change in my life. No rings over here, but that's okay. I've got Instagram and TikTok and all the fun things to look forward to. So new change of scenery for the both of us. Lives in her new house, and I am back in my parents' basement. So this, I don't know if this is gonna be my permanent setup. I'm not like loving it. Yeah. But it's like the only place I have a desk and a chair, because the rest of this house is like, my upstairs is like a total mess full of all my apartment stuff, and there's no room in my room for anything like this. So I might have to get a little creative for the next one, because I'm not loving this atmosphere.
All the wood.
The wood, the fishing, the hunting, the light's bad. I don't know. I'll have to figure something out. But anyways.
Yeah.
Sweet. So before we get into some of the big games that just wrapped up this past weekend, we just wanted to do some quick reintroductions. So if you're new joining us, this will be new information. And if you listened to all last year, this is kind of repetitive, but we'll try to be quick so we can get into the good stuff. So I'll just kind of kick it off. As we mentioned, my name's Haley. I live in Illinois now. I played volleyball for 13 or 14 years. It started when I was in the 6th grade. Played till I was a 5th year in college. And I was an outside hitter. I played all the way around a little bit. It went back and forth just a tad, depending on the day, I guess. But I like to say I was a 6th rotation outside, so that's what I go with. I'm a big Wisconsin fan. I'm really just a lover of the Big Ten when it comes to volleyball. I think it's really, really great talent and really great competition and a really fun conference to watch. So that's where my loyalties kind of lie. Let's see. Liv and I met in 2018, would have been your freshman year at Platteville. So I'm a year older than her.
Yep.
And we met then, and we've been friends ever since. So we ended our careers together, which was kind of a blessing. And yeah, that's kind of like the wrapped up version, I think. I don't know if there's any more crazy details to tell, but
we'll get into that stuff later.
Yeah, we'll touch on all the rest of that. Or you could go back and watch our very first episode where we did kind of dive into that just a little.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I live in Wisconsin, kind of the La Crosse area. Just moved here recently, but originally from the Milwaukee area. Also been playing volleyball for, I don't know, same as Haley, 15 years. Played club and then went to Platteville where we met, and I was also an outside hitter, recruited as an outside. All the way around, and then got switched to libero my freshman year. I dabbled in playing libero and outside throughout high school and club. Finished my freshman season as a libero, and then played the rest of my seasons as an outside 6th rotation hitter. I got banged up a few times from volleyball with some major injuries, but we're still kicking. And that's kind of my story on volleyball. Also a
Yeah.
huge Wisconsin fan. Love for the Big Ten. Yeah, Jack was asking me why I don't. We were watching the Nebraska documentary, and he was like, "I'm surprised you don't dislike Nebraska because like the rivalry between Wisconsin and Nebraska." I was like, "I just respect them, you know, like they've done so much for the game. I can't not like them. Like they're too good not to like." And I was
Yeah,
like, "It's very
actually,
different for
yeah,
football and other sports."
it is. It really is, especially I think when the way that Liv and I feel like we can both agree on this. But correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like the way that we kind of look at the game at this point in our lives is it's just really like an amazing thing to watch programs grow. And Nebraska's always been like a huge volleyball program, like always, attendance wise, and the spotlight on them and everything. Like I'm not taking away from that, but in the past couple of years, especially kind of since we had graduated and retired, I think that seeing the game grow in so many different ways is just enjoyable no matter who's doing the growing. And Nebraska is obviously at the forefront of that. The state, the city, the university, I mean, they do the most. And so it's hard not to kind of sit back and just admire and enjoy and respect what they're doing as just a lover of volleyball. But when it comes down to them playing Wisconsin, or, it comes down to that Big Ten championship, then that's kind of where like the line gets drawn a little bit. But especially at this time in the season when things are so early, and throughout conference play too, a little bit, like it's just hard not to have like the utmost respect and awe of what they're doing for the game.
Yeah, and that's what I told him. And I was like, there's some teams that I just don't like. I was like, Purdue is one of them that I just, there's just something about Purdue. I was like, for all the other Big Ten schools with, and all the other schools I'm fine with, but I was like, yeah, it's just different. Like, I feel like the game of volleyball, everyone just has love. Like, no matter if you're not on Nebraska or not, you still respect them and appreciate what how they've helped grow the sport. Whereas like other sports, or you hear about basketball and Caitlin Clark, and people like other pro WNBA players don't like her because she's good and she's brought so much attraction. Well, it's like you should be appreciating and thanking her. And I think it's just volleyball has a little bit more love, I think I've noticed, and playing it too, there's a lot more love in the community and a lot more respect for everyone that's playing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up the Nebraska documentary. So I have not watched that. So could you give me like a quick synopsis, or like what were some of your like takeaways or thoughts on it?
Yeah. So they kind of obviously went through Nebraska Day, or Volleyball Day in Nebraska, and kind of what that looked like. And then they really talked about after the season and like what it takes to be a Cornhusker, and like kind of the pressure that the girls have to deal with, and how this past season they were super young team, no seniors, kind of how they developed through the year, and then how they lost the championship and everything just kind of fell apart. And they kind of talked through that, and how throughout the spring season that they're working towards a different kind of culture. They also, which I was surprised, I didn't know that they were going to do, they also talked about Harper Murray a lot and her struggles that she was going through after the national championship, and kind of some things that she was dealing with personally, and all of the pressures that she was getting and other teammates were getting on social media, and like hate that they were getting, especially after the championship match, and kind of seeing how it affected her in her non-volleyball life. And then they also kind of talked, they actually talked about it a lot more, about her dad and his passing and the impact he has on her and stuff like that. So it was pretty powerful, and kind of just, you remember that they're 18-year-old girls and they've never had to be in the spot like this before, and they're in college and they're trying to navigate their life, but they're also like icons to us and role models to young girls. So it was good. I didn't know that they were going to talk about like some of the personal things that were going on with Nebraska volleyball. So.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter, and I think there was also an article that was released regarding the same thing, especially when it came to some of the legal offenses, I guess, for lack of a better word, that Harper Murray had kind of put herself in throughout the off season. I think it was actually in like April, I think is when some of that stuff started coming out. So yeah, it's hard. Like I definitely feel, like I have my own opinions on the way that some of it was handled, and I have my own opinions on the way that it's transferred to this fall.
Yeah.
But like we always say too, when we're watching, especially now being 25, it's hard to kind of remember how young these girls are. And I think about that when, I'm following them on Instagram, and, Devin Robinson has 40,000 followers on Instagram or whatever it is. And she's just posting pictures with her friends in college and her boyfriend, and just really normal things for a 21, 22-year-old girl to be posting. And it kind of puts you into check a little bit that like, these aren't technically professional athletes. They are not grown women necessarily. Like they don't have their frontal lobes like not developed. I mean, it's just like that kind of stuff that you kind of have to think of. And I think of when we were 22, and while I wasn't doing anything to insanely break the law, I definitely wasn't being the smartest person on planet Earth. So I think that sometimes it is hard to remember that. While I don't really agree with her actions, I think that it was brave to speak about it in any public matter outside of a statement on Instagram. So I'm definitely excited to check that out, and see, kind of what she had to say and what her teammates had to say, and that kind of thing. Cause I don't really think this storyline is going to be going away quite yet. So I'd love for it to have a little bit of context from the inside, while seeing some of the, post-game interview questions and that kind of thing coming out about her.
Yeah, definitely worth watching. We talk a lot about like the rivalry between Wisconsin and Nebraska, and how last year the first match that they played at Nebraska, and like that last point, I was like, I can't even watch this when CC was in there. I was like, turn it off. I can't watch it. I can't relive it. I'm gonna get really angry again. And then going back to when they played at Wisconsin at the field house and stuff like that. So it was cool, and it was cool to see like the journey and John Cook is amazing, and he did a really good job with it. So
awesome. Yeah, I look forward to that. Sweet. Well, thank you. Okay, let's dive into this past weekend. So we've been in the official start of the season for a little over a week.
Yeah.
I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And what we're going to touch on today is Labor Day weekend. So specifically, the State Farm Women's Volleyball Showcase is what I believe they were calling it. So 4 massive teams, top 20, 3 of them were top 10 teams gathered at Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee for a giant showcase. And I was lucky enough to get to go on both days. I did not watch all 4 matches, but I did go see Wisconsin play in full both days. And I have a lot of thoughts that I would love to chat with you about. So I guess we could start with Sunday. So on Sunday, at the time, they were number 3. Wisconsin played number 1, Texas. And then shortly after that, Stanford, which I believe was number 5, played Minnesota, which I believe was number 18.
16, I think.
They're somewhere in that realm. So first let's talk about Wisconsin and Texas. Texas 1-4 in case you missed it. And Liv, I don't believe you got to watch this match because you were in Canada and getting engaged and doing all the things.
Correct.
Okay.
I was a little preoccupied.
Yes, no problem at all. I have a couple thoughts I just want to run through regarding Texas, and then we can kind of get into a little bit of the nitty gritty about Wisconsin. And I don't really think that my thoughts like correlate to like a match recap necessarily. I guess that it all kind of plays together. But for the most part, my biggest thought on Texas when watching them, and I think that there's any volleyball fan who watches Texas, besides people who like genuinely hate them, would probably say that like Texas just moves like a well-oiled machine, right? So the way that they play, it's kind of like how I imagine like artists talk when they're like painting, that it's kind of like a symphony or like some kind of like music or you know something of that sort to like create art. That's
Mm-hmm.
what watching Texas play is to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's very smooth, it's very like calm,
Mm-hmm.
and you can just kind of like almost feel the connection between the girls on the court and the way that they move and the way that they speak, the way that
Mm-hmm.
they celebrate, like, and the way that they trust. It's just kind of like a very interesting dynamic to see in person. Like you can actually like you can feel it. Like they move together, they speak together, and there isn't just one girl who you feel like is kind of like holding them all up, right? Like they move really well together, they play off of each other really well. And I think that that's the way it's been for a few years now. Obviously they're back-to-back national champions for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But to see it in person was really like different than watching them on TV.
Yeah.
Obviously we have to talk about Madison Skinner.
Yeah.
This is her senior year, so this is her farewell tour, as I'm calling it, as she dominates every single person that comes in her way. Like she's literally eating these people alive. Also, on a separate note, one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my entire life. Like,
That's not fair.
she kept putting her on that giant jumbotron, and I was literally like, "Oh my god!" Like she literally, like, she's stunning.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to topic at hand. You can just tell that she's at like the top of her game, right? Like she's so confident. She knows where she wants to put the ball. And my favorite part about her is when she makes errors, it's like hard, you can tell that she can figure out what she did, but
Mm-hmm.
she's so quick to move on from it. And it's like just this like 3 second thing where you can kind of see her being like, okay, here's what happened, let it go, moving on. And I just think that that speaks to her success, like as a player.
Yeah.
It's crazy. She's definitely like to me, she is Texas volleyball.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it on Madison Skinner. Everybody knows everything about that anyways. What I really wanted to touch on and who I was really impressed with was the redshirt sophomore middle blocker. Mariana Singletary is her name. Oh my God. This girl is crazy good.
Yeah.
And I remember like when we were sitting in the stands, I just remember watching her and being like, she's going to kill everyone. Like she is so dominant. She's super tall. She's really built. And you can just tell how much she knows the game of volleyball. I mean, her block was crazy. Her slides are insane. And just like watching her play was really, really fun. And to me, and I was kind of telling my mom this on the way home, to me, Madison Skinner is that kind of constant, right? Like when you're in a bind, like you know you can go to her, she's gonna get the job done. She's gonna be a leader. She's that constant. And Singletary, in my opinion, was kind of like her perfect opposite, where Singletary brought that energy. She had the big kills, like she was always like all up in it. And I thought the two of them combined was like a really great combo to have for Texas because like we said, like we're sitting here and we're like, yeah, everybody knows that Madison Skinner can get the job done. And that's what makes her so great is she's that constant. And the Singletary kind of brings in this like new energy and like kind of like hard ass, like badass like vibes kind of. And they complemented each other so well.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I just looked in the Wisconsin match. She had 9 kills and 8 blocks. And I mean, for one of your first matches at Fiserv Forum against Wisconsin, like that's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, you would never know. Like if I didn't look up, like I was like I know I didn't see her play last year, so I looked her up. Like you would, if you were just like joining the game, you would have no idea how young she is or that she hasn't really played in matches like this before. So super impressed with her.
Yeah.
Those were just kind of my thoughts on Texas. Pretty basic. They haven't changed too much since last year.
No.
But I do want to touch on, and Taylor actually brought this. No, not Taylor. My cousin Lorena actually brought this up to me, and that is Whitney Lausine's on Texas
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
And I had totally forgot that we had talked about that.
Mhm.
And so yeah, she's a junior, an academic junior, I think. And she transferred from Nebraska. She took a year off after she lost her father. And she had a baby.
I was to say, did she also have a baby?
Yep, and she had a baby. And she was there, and we were watching her. She doesn't play in this lineup, but
Yeah.
I would assume that in the next year or so she probably will be.
Yeah.
But I watched her in hitting lines. Like, this girl did not miss a single beat.
Could you imagine, like, going through something like your dad passing away, and then also like giving birth, and then just being back at it, like nothing ever stopped you?
Nope. She was in the hitting lines. Her physically, she looked great. She looked happy. I mean, I was like,
Like, it's one thing to, play again, but not be at the level maybe exactly at where you're at. But from what it sounds like, she is the same as she was 2 years ago.
yeah, and I think it speaks so much to her and her talent and her work that you could take a couple of years off from a program like Nebraska, ultimately leaving a program like Nebraska where you were a freshman starter, and turn around and then join a program like Texas. I mean, I'm sure she tried out and did the whole process for Texas. They don't just take Joe Schmoes off the street. And I'm sure she has kind of a highlight reel from Nebraska, but she had to have proved to this Texas program, I can still play, I can still get the job done. And to do that and enter the greatest program in volleyball right now is Texas, based on their national championships. And to do that it's like unheard of. It's insane.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you see girls transferring from team to team in the Big Ten. Taylor Landfair transferred from Minnesota, where she was a starting outside six rotation, to Nebraska. She's not getting a look on the court. Not saying that whatever her name is, Lindsay,
Whitney
is also staying in the court, but the fact that she still took 2 years off and was able to get on Texas's roster, like, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah, and I definitely think that once Madison Skinner and Jenna Wenis are moved on and graduated, I definitely think there's going to be room for her to be a huge part of Texas moving forward. So it was cool to be reminded of that. Shout out to Lorena for reminding me. And yeah, so okay, let's move into the nitty gritty of Wisconsin. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts. And I've been going back and forth on said thoughts. So for those who haven't watched Wisconsin yet this year, I will give you a quick rundown of kind of what we are looking at currently, face value. Obviously we have Sarah Franklin, who is the team. She gets as many kills as the rest of the girls combined. She's a true leader. You can see it in her mannerisms. You can see it in her energy when she's on the court. She's the anchor right now, by a long shot. Devin Robinson, another key piece, has been bouncing between the right side and the middle. When I watched her against Texas, she was in the middle and a little bit on the right side. And then when I watched her against Stanford, she was on the right side. I don't care where you put Devin Robinson as long as she's on the court, to tell you the truth. My favorite thing about Devin is the energy that she has. And I'm not talking about her being the loudest or cheering the most. It's just her like demeanor and her kind of like bad bitch aura, I guess you could call it, that when she's on the court, it's different. And there's not a lot of people like that in the game. And Devin is one of those people. And I saw it all weekend. I mean, she's literally taped, Liv, like her whole shoulder is covered in KT tape. One knee has a brace on and one knee has the KT tape all down it. I mean, she's a fifth year. She's falling apart. She's crumbling. She's barely holding herself together. When you watch her play, you would have no idea. It's insane.
Yeah.
So she's been bouncing around a little bit. Obviously, when Devin's in the middle, Anna Smrek's on the other right side. We got Carter Booth in the middle, Caroline Crawford coming in to be in the middle. Caroline's got to play.
Yeah.
Caroline's got to play.
Mm-hmm.
She was great against Stanford. She had some really good kills, but she's a blocker. She's a blocker to her core. She's got to play.
Well, and I think with having her out, I mean, she was their middle all last year. She had a connection with who was her outside and right side, and bouncing with Devin. Like Devin can do both middle and right side, but also Devin did right side also all last year. Why are we changing it? This happened with me and you when we played. Why are we changing something if it's not broken? Like, it was working. Let them have even more time to get comfortable in that spot. Let them have more time to connect in a spot that they're comfortable with new players as well, and it'll be better. But instead, now you have new players and you're switching girls around, so they're uncomfortable. Veterans are uncomfortable in a position, trying to help out freshmen. It's a recipe for disaster. We had that almost our entire volleyball career, unfortunately, and it never worked. It never worked. Texas, it's not like they're throwing Maddie Skinner as a setter, you know.
Yeah.
Bouncing. We're not bouncing. No other teams are bouncing around. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And I get going between players in that position, Anna Smrek and Devin Robinson, if you're running a 5-1. Okay, that makes sense. But keep them in that position that they've been practicing and honing in on their skills for the last 4 years. Why all of a sudden are we putting Devin back in the middle? She hasn't played middle consistently since her freshman year.
Right. And that kind of leads me to my next point, which is why this is even becoming a conversation, is because they're running a 5-1.
Yeah.
So I think Charlie is going to be a Sydney Hailey. Like, I think she's gonna be so great. However, I don't think you can keep having these miracle stories of freshman 5-1 setters that have years like Bergen Riley and Sydney Hailey did. And I don't think that's anything to Charlie at all. I just think that when you're playing on a stage as large as Wisconsin and you're playing with a lot of seasoned hitters who know what this means, what every loss means, and what they're really striving for, like, these upperclassmen, they know what a national championship tastes like. Yeah. And I just think that when you have so many seasoned hitters, having a freshman in that position is a little bit difficult. Now, the problem being, you run a 6-2, now you have 2 freshman setters.
Yeah.
So and maybe that's not a problem. I just think that from watching, you think you can tell that there's a very big disconnect to me based on the girls who you can visibly see are seasoned volleyball players at this level and girls who are fresh to it. You can't avoid it. I mean, every freshman, right? And he doesn't have other setters. So I do get that.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, specifically with the setter position and it being a freshman, that's like the one hardest spot to have your freshman be in, unfortunately, because, I mean, watching it, you could see the disconnects in those sets, the off tempo, so fast, so high, whatever it is. And that takes a long time to build that and to really make those connections. And Wisconsin doesn't have a lot of time, unfortunately, and not having even a sophomore or like someone who's been on the team as a setter for more than a year or 0 years, it's hard.
It is. And like I said, I don't think that it's impossible, especially with Charlie. But yeah, I think that you can tell, like, especially to me, the biggest issue was her defense. And I think that when you're playing teams like Texas and you're playing teams like Stanford, they can see visibly that you are the weak link, and it's very easy for them to hit to you. And I think that was like just the biggest thing. The other thing I kind of noticed too, with a little bit of the age stuff, was the miscommunications, I think, were a lot more apparent than other teams that I watched this weekend. And that's, again, I think it's that age thing. And we talked about it last year too. The difference that makes in your game, being a freshman at 18 and readjusting to a new tempo, and girls who are 22, 23 years old. I mean, it's a hard gap to fill. But those were some of the kind of like flaws I saw in this lineup that Kelly Sheffield is attempting. And to me, the strength in Wisconsin has always been these seasoned players.
Yeah, definitely. What did you think of the two liberos?
So I go back and forth on this. When I watched their first game against Louisville, I hated it. I hated it so much. It feels so unnecessary. And I still feel that way in a sliver, but seeing it in person, I can understand it. So basically what we're talking about is Gulce Guchkin is a libero, as well as Sage, what's her last name?
Damrow.
Gigi's a sophomore? Junior. She's sophomore, junior. Sage is for sure a sophomore.
Yeah, Gigi's a junior. Gigi's
okay.
Sage, yeah.
Perfect. And basically what Kelly Sheffield is doing is he has two liberos, so Sage and Gigi. And on rotations where Wisconsin is serving, Gigi is in as the libero. She's heavily playing defense. No serve receive. On rotations where the other team is serving, Sage is in. So these two are switching out constantly.
Yeah.
That's the part I don't like.
Yeah.
I just think that with the talent Wisconsin possesses, you should be able to pick one.
Yes.
The other problem I have with it is there were multiple times where he needed a DS and did not have any because he's got two liberos and he has someone playing right back. And he has Julia playing technically as a DS right now. So that's kind of where my gripe is with it. Is to me, even though they're both playing consistently, it feels like a waste.
Yeah. I also think that
I get it. Like, I do get it.
Yeah.
And watching it, I got it. Like, I can understand.
Yeah.
But it feels like a waste to me.
It seems unnecessary. It also seems that if you are a libero at the D1 level, at Wisconsin's level, you should be able to serve, receive, and play defense. You shouldn't just like specialize in one. If you're a libero, that means that you're the best damn passer that there is. Defense and serve, receive. That's the only thing you do. So now you're essentially training Sage to only be amazing at serve, receive, not defense, right? Because that's what she's primarily in there for, is only serve, receive. Yes, she has to play some defense, but your main focus is serve, receive. Gigi, same thing. Her main focus is defense now. She's not even serve receiving. Like, that is completely out of the question. She's only playing defense, where Sage will have to do both. But, like, I don't see the benefit in it. And I also think it just gets chaotic. And what happens if, I know you can pull one and not put them back in, but then it just seems then they can't play at all. Like, they can't then be a DS for someone. They have to be a libero. And then you have to pull out the other libero if they're doing well. So I almost feel like there's more cons to it personally than there are pros, because like you said, now they're lacking a DS. They have a right side playing back row. They have Julia. I don't know, she's injured still. She's playing as a DS right now instead of as an outside. And I think it would, especially with all the subs and lineup changes as is, having someone switch on and off the court every play seems excessive and disrupts the connections that are on the court. The libero is also the glue and tends to be a leader, or should be a leader. And if you're constantly going back and forth and one is a leader and one's not, that changes the flow every single time.
Yes, and I think that's the best way to describe it, is it just felt quite chaotic.
Yeah.
And I don't, like I said, I don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And Kelly Sheffield, he always starts like this where it's a little funky, and he does end up figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
However, this is new, and I don't know. I don't know about it.
But
This is kind of the first year in a while where we haven't been like we're gonna win a national championship. Like,
yeah,
this year feels rocky.
yeah, and it's interesting. Everyone has every year, every team goes through changes, and never seems to be consistently changing lineups once season starts. Like
Right.
multiple players in multiple positions. Like that's what preseason is for and spring season is for, is to try and figure that out. So you have a more solidified lineup come season. And I feel like the past few years, the Badgers have never had their solid starting lineup at the beginning of season. They've had, like you said, this funky, everyone changing positions the first few weeks, and it goes well and it doesn't go well. And then finally, halfway through the season, it's a solidified lineup. But like that should already have happened. And that's what preseason was for. And so I don't really understand it, but like you said, it somehow always works out in the end. But I feel like there could be more success and peaking at the right level better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. That's kind of how it felt. It was very it felt like you were watching a tryout, kind of.
Yeah.
Or like he's trying to like give some girls like trial runs, like, are you gonna crack or are you gonna do well? And it just kind of sucks that it's taking place against some of your biggest matches that you'll probably have in the non-conference right now. So I'm hopeful, that these last 3 games have given him a lot of insight to what he thinks can be / should be done.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful he figures it out. I trust him. Mm-hmm. I do. But yeah, I don't know what it looks like. I really don't. But it was interesting to see. It was frustrating a little bit. Service errors, horrible service errors. From all teams I watched. That's not just Wisconsin, but obviously they make me more mad coming from Wisconsin because I'm.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on Wisconsin?
No.
Okay. We still love you, Badge. Figure it out.
Do.
Okay, really quickly, I just want to touch on Stanford and Minnesota super duper quick. So I did get to watch Stanford. They look like Stanford. They do. This is a team that's going to be a real threat in the postseason. Cammie Minor is, I believe she's a 5th year now. Is the 5-1 setter for Stanford. She's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Not only is she a great setter, her defense was absolutely insanely crazy. And just watching her being a leader on the court really was fun. She was really happy. She was the first person to kind of give feedback. She was the first person to be in the huddle. You can just tell that the girls that play for Stanford trust her and want to follow her. And I think that's going to lead to their success for the remainder of the year. Like, she is the rock.
Yeah.
Cool. And then of course having to touch on Elia Rubin. She's the outside hitter for them. Just incredible. That girl's got a freaking arm on her, man. She was great. She was great last year. She was great to watch play against Wisconsin. And yeah, so I was excited. I didn't watch them play Minnesota on day 1, so I kind of went into day 2 fresh, and I'm glad I did. It was fun to kind of get to be surprised by them and see them. Got a couple new girls in there, but for the most part, they look like a pretty strong unit. And I think with Cammie leading them, they're going to find success pretty easily.
Yeah, not surprised.
No. All right, lastly, let's talk about Big Ten rival Minnesota. For those of you who missed it, Minnesota upset Texas. Minnesota 16, 18. I don't even know what they were going into this. Took over number 1 Texas. Yeah. So, unfortunately, this happened on the day they had just released this week's rankings. Yeah. So we won't know how high Minnesota gets. I believe they're at 18 right now.
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm intrigued to see how high they go for taking down Texas. They took them down in 5. The 5th set was 15-7.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched,
right, 15-7. They didn't just skim by and barely beat them. They beat them. They put the hammer down.
Yes, and the last few points were aces, kills, and blocks. I mean, it wasn't like Texas was doing unforced errors. Like Minnesota had full control of the 5th set. Now what I only got to see them warm up, and then Minnesota's the only team I didn't actually get to see play. Because they obviously don't play Wisconsin, because they're in the same conference. So I watched them warm up, and then we watched most of set 1 versus Texas. And then I watched set 5 on my television when I got home. Minnesota has girls that I recognize from last year. Now that might be a me problem, but obviously we have Melanie Schaffmaster, the 5th-year setter, who was in absolute shambles at the end of last year physically. She looked great.
Yeah.
She had no knee braces. She looked happy. I thought that was fantastic. Then we have McKenna Wooker, who was the blonde, long-haired outside from Minnesota. I thought she looked great. And then the right side, whose name always passes me, but I'm so beyond impressed with her every time I watch her. Those were the only 3 I recognize. They have a new libero from Turkey.
Yeah.
And she was phenomenal.
She was awesome.
I don't know what they eat over there or how they train or what it is, but good Lord, she was amazing. And a bunch of pictures came out of her from the game, and she's so smiley and she's celebrating every point, and I just loved her.
Yeah.
I loved her. I don't really have any major takeaways from Minnesota besides the fact that they've clearly had a culture shift. I think that's where they struggled really bad last year, is their culture was just not great. And they got a new coach last year, so that kind of aids in that a little bit, girls coming and going. But to me, this seems like a team that is, obviously it's easy to say because they took down Texas, but this is going to be a team that's going to be a threat in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, and they haven't been. It's kind of always been Minnesota. You might take them before, it'll be a beatable team. But from what I saw, I'm a little scared.
Yeah, and I think them at home is going to be a major threat to Big Ten teams when they're playing there. I think they're going to be a big threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exciting though. We love the Big Ten, so when all the Big Ten teams are amazing, it can go either way, which sucks, but that makes it just so much better. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, because Minnesota is going to be a powerhouse. Nebraska, obviously a powerhouse. Wisconsin's in the contending powerhouse range. And then you have Purdue, of course. Penn State's up there. Yeah, it's gonna be a great.
We have all the new Big Ten schools. So who is it? USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA. So.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I'm very excited for conference to get underway. And lots of big volleyball is gonna be coming up. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my wrap up on my Labor Day weekend. I should mention on Monday we got to sit pretty much on the court, which at Fiserv is something.
If anyone was watching, Hailey was behind the guy in the green that was at the announcer stand. She was wearing a gray sweatshirt and a red hat.
The other funny thing my cousin sent me was we're in the back of Texas volleyball's warm up photos. You can clearly see me in my hat.
Yes.
I don't know if you'll be able to tell on the screen, but that in the hat is me.
It was funny. I was telling Jack where you were, and he goes, "Is she the one that has her head down?" I was like, "Yeah, she's texting me right now."
Yeah, I was texting you in the group chat. But yeah, it was really cool. It was cool to be that close to 2 teams. I mean, at the field house, like it's almost impossible to sit that close to them because of season ticket holders and student sections and the people who stand out there from 7:30 in the morning. And with Texas, we just don't get to see them play in person. So, or excuse me, with Stanford. And so it was just really cool to get to have that opportunity to see them up close. Obviously being that low in Fiserv is a big deal too, because I could never afford to sit there for like a Bucks game. So that part, it was really cool. The experience was cool. It was fun to get to share that, to enjoy that. And yeah, I had a blast. Our seats were great. Saw Devin Robinson afterwards talking to Cammie Minor and then Stanford's libero. And kind of like you mentioned, just like the love of the game, like they were hugging and taking pictures. And it was just like fun to see like that. I don't know. I just love that. So yeah, so it was cool. Dana Recchi was also there. I cannot forget to mention that with her silver medal. And then when we were leaving Fiserv, we were walking to the parking lot we were at, and she was coming the other way with, I'm assuming, is her family. And I had the perfect opportunity to say something, and I choked and I panicked and I didn't. And I regret it greatly, but that girl is so tall. Like, it's one thing to see her on TV, but to walk past her, I was like, oh my God. Yeah, so that one's gonna haunt me for a while.
You could have dropped our podcast name and then we could have become famous.
I know. Don't worry, I'm working my way into Devin Robinson. Skylar, actually, they follow each other on Instagram. My sister Skylar ran into her in Platteville, and now they're crazy. Mutuals. So I'm really working my way.
There you go.
I'm gonna figure it out. Anyway, I think I hit on all of the topics from the weekend. So perfect. Any last thoughts?
No, I don't think so. Unfortunately, like you said, I didn't get to watch much, but what I did was awesome volleyball. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and it's only getting better. Nebraska's playing right now. I'm going to try to catch a little bit of that game too. If they haven't already finished already, sweeping everybody. But I'm excited to check them out too. I haven't really had the opportunity to sit down and watch Nebraska yet, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. So moving forward, Liv and I decided we are going to record on Mondays because that is when the rankings come out and we can kind of wrap up weekends, and then episodes will come out on Tuesdays or Wednesdays depending on my schedule and how quick my computer can work. And then basically how we're going to structure episodes is we're going to pick 6 matches of the week because we are starting 6, obviously. And we're going to touch on those, give our thoughts on those matches. So we're going to decide in advance which 6 matches we're really going to hone in on. And then if any crazy ones kind of pop up, we'll do a few honorable mentions here or there. And then we're each going to pick a player of the week. And then we're bringing back our bench and start segment where we bench something or someone or a team or a thing or a thought that we did not like. And then we'll start the same thing, but it was something we did like.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how episodes are going to look moving forward. If you're not already following us on social media, please do so. I believe it's Starting Six or Starting Six Podcasts on all platforms. We're going to try to be more active now that the season's back up and going. So yeah, but as always, thank you for tuning in and listening. I apologize for this situation. I'm going to figure that out. But anyways, Liv, it's always so fun to talk volleyball with you, and I just love you so much.
Love you. I'm so excited to get this season 2 started. I'm so excited for all the volleyball. So stay tuned, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Bye.